Welcome back to the Humble Market Timer YouTube channel. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Today's video, I want to look at Bitcoin and what the charts and what history suggests the price movement of Bitcoin will be in the next, say, 2 months or so, in the short term. Very interesting setup that we have with Bitcoin right now, and I just want to delve a little bit deeper into that to kind of give people ideas of at least what the technicals and history suggest. Before I go any further, let me show you my disclaimer. Once again, these are my sold ideas and not investment advice. Now, just looking at the chart of Bitcoin as we see up here right now, you can see that Bitcoin has just been making a tremendous move in the last 2.5 years or so. This is a weekly chart. And as you can see, Bitcoin has moved all the way from about 15,000 back in July of 2022 to now over 120,000. Currently, we're at 117, but we've moved over to over 120,000, and that's over a 10x move in the last 2.5 years. That is a massive move. We've had some slight dips and slight pullbacks, but nothing significant. And when you have a move that significant, it suggests that there will be a pullback at some point, because that type of movement is just unsustainable. No matter what the commodity, security, or whatever it is, nothing moves straight up. And so just kind of looking at what the charts say right now, as you can see, again, the price action has been moving up steadily. But what you have here, and what I like to show in cryptocurrency in particular, is I like to have that RSI at the bottom, because RSI, which is a relative strength index, works very, very well in predicting entrances and exits for crypto. If you notice here, every time Bitcoin has got to that 30-ish time frame on the weekly RSI, that has always yielded monster gains. You've always had big moves once you've had it make that dip to that 30-ish, low 30 area of the RSI. So that occurred, the last time that occurred was in that 2022 area, and I've just mentioned the move that it has made in the last 2.5 years if you would have bought in that time frame. Now, if you look at where we are now, we're not anywhere close to that area in the RSI. We're actually in the 60s now. So if you're looking for a long-term time frame as far as to buy, now is not the good time to buy Bitcoin, in my opinion. But just looking at things short term, you can see that, again, we've had price action move higher, but if you notice on the RSI, the action is moving lower. I've tried to create a parallel where you can see the RSI traveling within that parallel. And what you also will find is that when price action, or when the RSI breaks out of its parallels, typically you get even bigger moves and more predictable moves than if just the price action itself breaks out of a parallel of some sort. So it can be really helpful to look at the RSI when determining different price movements. And when you have an increase in price but a decrease in relative strength, that's called bearish divergence. Usually it doesn't show up in the price dropping right away, but eventually you get that turned down. You see here, we had back in 2021 and 2022, you saw there's a slight move up here, but then there was a downward motion on the RSI. And what did that eventually yield? A big move down. I think we're in the process of that happening. I don't think it's going to be a significant move right now. I think maybe it'll be more in 2026. But I believe in the short term, you will see movement down. Also, this top parallel in the RSI has acted as resistance, and the price action tends to move down once it hits that top parallel in the RSI. So I think you will see in the next month or two potentially the move lower here in the RSI. There is slight room, based looking at the price action, where it could go a little bit higher, but I think your overall movement will be lower in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's what the technicals say. Now let's look at history. If you look at the history of Bitcoin, this is a nice breakdown of what Bitcoin has done every month in its existence. Red means negative, and green means it's moved up positively. And as you can see historically, August and September are historically the worst months, the worst performing months for Bitcoin. Don't necessarily know if there's necessarily a rhyme to the reason, but that has generally been the case. And what has always been the case is if you have a green month in August, you are guaranteed to have a red month in September. Sometimes you have red months in both August and September, but you will always have, at least since Bitcoin has been in existence, you have always had one red month at least in September and August if you look at those 2 months by themselves. As you can see, we have had very few red months in 2025. Only 2. March was just a small red. February was pretty substantial red, but for the most part, it has been a steady green and movement up in Bitcoin for all of 2025. But history suggests that eventually, and that typically, we do get a red month either in August and September or both in August and September. So keep that in mind when you're looking at how action is performing. We're only at about a little less than 2% in August, so that could eventually go to red. But as of right now, we're still green. But again, look for the potential for there to likely be either a red month in August, both in August and September, or in one or the other. Also, when I look at crypto, I like to look at other crypto companies, crypto coins. And the main three I always like to look at are, to me, I call them sort of the 3 big dogs. The 3 big dogs are always, Bitcoin is the biggest dog. And then you have Ethereum, which is next, and then Solana, which is third. Just kind of looking at Solana very briefly, you can see, again, looking at the RSI, it is hitting at the top of that parallel. That tends to predict that we may be in the process of having a move down in Solana. Be on the lookout for that. The ideal buy spot for Solana, if you can get it, if it gets there, is when it hits down here. That's when you want to load the boat typically in your crypto coins. Looking at Ethereum, now Ethereum has made a move out of its parallel, and that is why Ethereum has moved much higher than Bitcoin and Solana in the last 3 months. As you can see, once it does break out that parallel, the moves can be pretty explosive. And as you can also see, Ethereum hit in that 30-ish RSI, and look at the move once it hit in that area. So that is why you always need to look for potential big buy spots to be when that RSI, weekly RSI, hits in that 30-ish area. Now, the last thing I want to look at is what could cause this short-term drop in crypto in the next month and a half to 2 months or so. One, you can look at our president, Trump. He's very unpredictable. He tends to like to ruffle feathers. So there could be a number of things that could occur that could cause a temporary drop in the markets. It could deal with some of the tariffs or some other conflict with other countries. You really never know. Again, he's very unpredictable. So that could be a reason for there to be a drop in the next month or two. But in my opinion, I think the drop will be due more so to inflation and the Fed. Um, One of the things that occurred on Thursday was that we had a spike in PPI, which or the producer price index. That's the wholesaler, or what the people the consumers, which is what we are. We buy things from wholesalers. It showed that the wholesalers' prices have gone up. And so generally what that means is if the wholesaler prices go up, typically that trickles down to the consumer. So when you have that happens, that means prices go up, and that gives the fear of inflation, and that can cause the markets to drop. Now, how that affects the Fed is the Fed has, well, Donald Trump has long been requesting the Fed to lower interest rates to try to make things a little more palpable and feasible for the general public for housing. But because the prices of things hasn't been spiking, the inflation hasn't been high, the job market has been very steady. They have been, when I say they, I mean the Fed, they have been hesitant to lower interest rates. And the expectation is for them to possibly finally lower interest rates in September. But when you have an increase possibly in inflation, they're less inclined to do so. So there could be some conflict where the market expects one thing. Could be that they expect maybe a significant cut by the Fed, and maybe they just give us something small, and the market doesn't like that, and that causes a small drop or a drop in the market. But I believe that is the most likely suspect for what could cause the market to fall in the next month and a half or so. So be on the lookout for those things. Keep an eye on that RSI, see if it breaks out. If it breaks out, there's a good chance that we could have a significant move higher in Bitcoin going into the end of the year. And we may still get that, but I think we're due for a bit of a pullback in this next month or two. Hope you like the content. Once again, if you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.